Start, bench, cut these 3 Penn State running backs in college. Can you tell me who Penn State football is playing this weekend?
Sorry, what?
Welcome back into the Penn State Pulse. I'm your host, Dylan Dawson. I'm all moved into the new apartment. Feels great to be back in State College, and it is finally here. Welcome to game week. We are recording this episode on Wednesday night, August 28th, just 3 days before this matchup, where number 8 Penn State travels to Morgantown to take on West Virginia in the season opener. This game will be a noon kick on Fox. The spread has been interesting to follow. That opened around PSU by 13 or 14, and that now sits down at 8 as I'm recording this. So there has been a lot of money coming in for the Mountaineers. An important stat to note is that West Virginia is 0-4 against the spread in its last 4 games against ranked teams. Shout out Josh Pate for finding that one. All right, let's jump into some WVU players to watch. Penn State won this matchup last season by the score of 38-15 in Beaver Stadium, but many think this year could be a different story. So I'm going to give you guys a few names to keep an eye on, and that could be a difference maker for West Virginia on Saturday. So the first name to mention is obviously West Virginia quarterback Garett Green. He struggled last season with accuracy as he completed passes at about a 53% clip. Reports are, though, that he did have a pretty good offseason. Regardless of where he stands there in that passing game, though, he is someone who can absolutely beat you every single game with his legs. He is a quick and elusive runner, so the Nittany Lions will probably have to assign a spy on the majority of defensive downs. Moving on, the Donaldson and White running back duo. Starting with C.J. Donaldson, he will return for them at halfback, and standing at about 6'2", 240, that is not an easy tackle to make. He went for 81 yards and a touchdown in 2023 against Penn State, and about 800 yards and 11 touchdowns on the whole season. His complementary piece, who hails from my hometown of York, PA, is Jaheim White. And White is quite literally the opposite style of back, as he is about 5'7", 195. And he went for about 850 yards and 4 touchdowns in 2023. He did that on slightly over 100 carries too, which averaged out to 7.7 yards per carry. So he's more of their big play guy, whereas Donaldson is kind of just that bruiser who can help in those goal line and short yardage situations. The next name I wanted to mention, and the final offensive name here, is Rickdarius Farmer, who is a true freshman wide receiver that they flipped from Pitt, which is pretty interesting considering that that's a pretty strong rivalry between Pitt and West Virginia. But yeah, Rickdarius, he goes by Day Farmer. He's had a very nice offseason according to a lot of reports out of Morgantown, and he could be their big play guy from the jump. He's still a bit undersized, standing at 5'11", 165, 170, but it's been said that he has the speed to make up for it. Moving on to the defense, Aubrey Burks is probably their best player on that side of the ball. The 5'11" safety from Florida posted 48 tackles, 4 passes defensed, 2 interceptions, 1.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble last season. So he's just kind of all over the field for them. He's going to be in the back of that defense kind of leading them. He's a very experienced veteran, so I expect him to do his best to keep them in the game on Saturday. And then looking down along that defensive line, Sean Martin is the difference maker there. He stands at about 6'5", 300 and is a force for the Mountaineers. He doesn't necessarily pad the stat sheet, but he's constantly forcing pressure on the passer and especially clogging those rushing lanes. He wears number 91. I can almost promise there will be at least one play Saturday that makes you go, who was that? And it'll be Sean Martin. So let's jump into some predictions in this second segment of the podcast. First, I'm going to try and call the first touchdown of the season for Penn State. And that was between 2 guys for me, and it's 2 guys who I think will have a huge impact on this game Saturday, and that is tight end Tyler Warren and running back Katron Allen. So I'm going to lock this in right now. Your first Nittany Lion to score a touchdown this season will be Katron Allen. Katron should be used a ton in this game, especially in those goal line situations. I think he actually ends up getting more carries than Nick Singleton, but Nick gets more snaps overall. AK's going to work Nick into the pass game a bunch, and I believe we'll see that from the jump this season starting in a few days against WVU. My second prediction is going to come on the defensive side of the ball. West Virginia ran for 146 yards on Penn State last season. They didn't exactly have their way with PSU's front, but they were able to consistently generate chunk plays in the run game. West Virginia lost a ton of talent on their offensive line this past offseason, mostly to the NFL draft, and that includes elite center Zach Frazier, who is now a Pittsburgh Steeler. They have the talent in their backfield. That running back duo I mentioned earlier is great, probably a top 5 or 6 duo in the country. But I think PSU returning all 4 of their top D tackles from last season, combined with the Mountaineers throwing a lot of offensive linemen with less experience in there, will result in a fairly dominant performance from Penn State's rush defense. So prediction number 2, Penn State holds West Virginia under 100 total rush yards this Saturday. All right, my final prediction before I take a stab at this final score involves the ever-evolving roller coaster that is the PSU wide receiver room. So I'm going to single one guy out, and I'm going to say that Liam Clifford leads all Penn State wide receivers in receptions against West Virginia. He's had, from all reports, an awesome offseason and seems ready to not only start, but be a meaningful contributor in pretty much every game. I still have Trey Wallace at wide receiver 1 on the season. I'm pretty bullish on that. If you've seen any of these other podcasts where I talked about him, he was probably supposed to be wide receiver 1 last year before he actually got hurt. But tying this back to Clifford, give me a strong game from Liam Clifford to open the season. All right, and then to close us out, we have the final score prediction. I do think this is a fairly sloppy game from Penn State. For one, they're breaking in all 3 new coordinators in their first season here, as well as the second reason, which is the projected weather forecast. That is supposed to be high 80s, pretty humid, showers in the morning, and then a very high chance of rain around noon or 1 p.m. is when it should start. So maybe the rain holds off until later in the game, but we'll likely see a lot of this game played in wet conditions. So I'm going to say that West Virginia keeps it close in the first half at least, but the Nittany Lions are able to just sort of lean on them, kind of what Michigan's been doing to teams the last 2 years, and just finish out with a win to open the season. So give me Penn State 27, West Virginia 17. I leave on Friday morning with some friends, so I can't wait to get down to Morgantown and hopefully kick off this season in the right way, which would be with a mark in the win column. So that is going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning into the Penn State Pulse. I'm your host, Dylan Dawson, and I'll see you in Morgantown.